Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, Peter, a couple of days ago, we had Dima Babic on, and we had a very long, fascinating conversation about the upcoming Russian election, and they have now taken place. The results are still uncertain, but it looks at the moment is that the ruling party will gain its supermajority. Even though the Communist Party of Zyuganov will have increased its vote quite substantially. But we'll talk about that, I think, when the results are clear on another occasion. Right now, I just want to address an article that appeared in today's New York Times, which is a fascinating exemplar of Western media coverage of the Russian election. So we have the headline, which says, Russian election shows declining support for Putin's party. So again, 1 minute he's a dictator, next minute rejoice. The election shows declining support for the dictator.
Just reflect upon what you just said there, George. Declining support for the dictator. Okay, but that's exactly the Western mentality, as if dictators care about public support. But anyway,
exactly. That's it. Yeah. So, and it goes on. It says Russian elections are not free and fair, and Parliament's role in recent years has mainly been to rubber stamp the Kremlin's initiatives while providing a veneer of democratic legitimacy to Mr. Putin's rule. Again, it's kind of interesting how, news and opinion is long kind of, the distinction between the two has long disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, but you could take out a few words and put in executive order like they do it in the United States.
Exactly.
But I digress.
Exactly. And then this is an interesting where it's saying here that yes, so this is another class. It says the multi-day nature of the elections, measures officially put in place to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, increased the likelihood of fraud by making the process harder to monitor, election observers and Kremlin critics said. Now, didn't we, the United States introduce multi-day voting, and wasn't the attempts on the part of various states to reduce the number of days of voting, the New York Times screamed, that's voter suppression. And didn't we, wasn't it the multi-day voting that we had in the United States, the freest, fairest election ever? But apparently in Russia, hey, it could lead to fraud. Whoa, that's allegedly put in place because of the COVID virus. Allegedly, unlike, of course, in the United States.
George, just before I forget, you could just take Russia out and put the name United States in. It would be you would recognize the article, would you? Wouldn't?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. And then the rest of the article, that's quite a long article, is all given over to quotes from Navalny and the people associated with Navalny, as if they're the only people who matter. And what is very amusing is then they say, the communists have done well. That's because of Navalny's strategic voting. It's because they've been telling people to vote strategically for the communists, and that's why they've done well. There's no evidence for this. The communists were doing very well in the polls. Right. Leading up to the election. I mean, everyone for weeks had been expecting the communists to do well. So, typically the New York Times, that's it. Navalny has shown how popular he is. The communists have done well.
And George, name me some governments around the world that have done well in the polls in light of the coronavirus and lockdown. How many governments have come out on top? Right. How many of them have taken a pounding? Okay. Right. Okay. Sure. People moan and groan about it here. A lot of small businesses were decimated. Okay. There's a lot of people that are upset with the government policy, just like every other government in the world. And as you just said, I mean, I remember talking about it with close friends, my neighbors, and all of that. Is back in spring. Is it the United Russia is going to take a pounding because people are disgruntled. Okay, and with good reason. It's called a pandemic.
Right, right. Yeah, no question. I mean, that's it. They're disgruntled. The economic downturn has hit everybody. I mean, yeah, what happens when there's an economic downturn? And you know, something similar happened in the United States. You know, Trump got punished to a certain extent because of the economic dislocation caused by COVID. So, you know, the election was, you know, basically, you know, not a bad result for the ruling party. But what we knew going in was that you would either have two stories: election fraud, that's it, you know, this completely meaningless, you know, doesn't, you know, we should discount it completely, or great, he took a real pounding. It just shows how Russians hate Putin. So this is, you know, it's kind of an amazing how you get this Western media coverage. I mean, it's a joke. Imagine if the Russian media covered U.S. elections in this way. I mean, you think this, you know, of course, well, you know, what do you expect from them? But this has now become the norm for the Western media and coverage of Russian politics in general.
I remember talking, this was years ago, to the New York Times correspondent here in Moscow. And we were socially kind of friendly. We knew some similar people. And she would send out to us a circular, you know, her article that she had written. And I wrote back to her. I said, you know, this is all kind of nice and fine, but, you know, for every person that is pro-Putin, for example, or likes United Russia, for example, you have 4 people that are against it. I said, but that's not how that's not the lay of the land. Okay, right. It's always tilted in one direction. You said, well, I like diversity of opinion. And I said, well, why don't you reflect opinion, okay, right. And not your preferences for diversity. Right. And this is what happens all of the time. Again, the amount of words and lines devoted to Navalny, it is completely outsized his impact here. Okay, exactly. And this smart voting thing, it's just a complete illusion. There's no evidence of it.
That's it, yeah. And what's also amusing is their indignation that you know, that these the Navalny people, you know, they didn't have their apps on Google, and they therefore, they didn't have, voters didn't have access to information about Navalny. Now let me think. Now, the U.S. election, didn't we have all of the stories suppressed about things that the Democrats did not like? Didn't we all have Twitter putting in little messages about this stuff is unreliable?
Didn't they demolish Parler?
That's right. Yeah. Didn't they kick off the president of the United States from Twitter? Facebook, and so YouTube is not carrying Navalny's things. Now let me think. Isn't YouTube carrying anything by Trump? No, nothing. YouTube carries nothing by Trump. Trump can attend a rally. It'll be on Newsmax. YouTube will not cover it. They will not even have a recording of what he said at the rally. So it's amazing. Get terribly indignant. Oh, YouTube is not nothing for Navalny's supporters.
They can't. YouTube will not show Trump's image. I mean, they'll carry his voice, but they won't show his face of speaking. Okay,
right. But yeah. I don't think they even have any his rallies. I mean, if you try and look at YouTube for his rallies, they will not have that anyway.
Well, I mean, anyone that knows anything about politics outside of the United States, the New York Times is just pure hypocrisy. Yeah. We could bring up many more examples, those terrible Kremlin, what they're doing, but everything that they claim that Russia is doing, the US does to itself, and media does to the electorate in the United, I'm sorry, big tech does to the electorate as well. I mean, they have no self-reflection.
None. Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. We now have the media that are a player in American politics. They step in on behalf of the Democrats, and they put their thumb very firmly on the scale. They suppress stories that they don't want. They suppress candidates that they don't like. And the New York Times thinks it's fine. Well, if it's on our side, then 2 thumbs up. But then when they have Russia, they're very, very indignant about this. But we also know that it's utter hypocrisy. If it went the other way, if there was the opposition were in power, and YouTube was suppressing Putin's supporters, or Zhirinovsky supporters, or the communist supporters. New York Times would be all for it, just as they were for the 1993 onslaught on the parliament by Yeltsin. Great, that's for democracy.
What's really interesting is that people like the New York Times, for some reason, George, they believe they've been given the God-given right to determine what democracy should mean anywhere in the world, particularly in Russia. As I said earlier, the outcome of the election, the tentative outcome, is basically what everyone expected.
Yes.
So you can talk about all kinds of fraud and ballot stuffing, et cetera, et cetera. You can talk about irregularities all you want. It doesn't change the needle one way or another.
Right. And again, the ballot stuffing. Okay, so you got some instances of ballot stuffing, but again, if everything is controlled, if this is the managed democracy, then why do we need ballot stuffing?
It just beggars belief. Okay, if it's either it's democracy or it's a dictatorship. But stop cherry picking from both. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, like as we again talk about America, where you bring out, you first tell everybody voting stop. That's it. Everybody go home. Boom. But we're not going to go home. We're going to stay here, and we're going to take out our suitcases with ballots in them, and then we put them through the machine. Again, imagine if this was in
multiple
Russia.
times.
Well, we had videotape. Everybody was sent home. Said, the vote count is stopped. We're going to stay, and we're going to take, look at what's in the suitcases. Imagine if this was in Russia. How the New York Times were played. So you have a few instances. Look, it's a big country. Maybe somewhere, somebody was stuffing a ballot.
Look. When you have elections everywhere at all times, there is somebody trying to fiddle with it, okay? And you and I could talk for hours about that in the United States, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
But the outcome that was predicted in spring, as we approach this election cycle, the outcome has essentially come to pass. So,
yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody, we're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. George, when's your next live stream?
Maybe towards the end of this week. So we'll see. I'll let everybody know when the next one. So.
George and I, just right before we convened to do this video, we had a one-on-one with a gaggler, which was very, very interesting, very insightful. On Friday, and we've enshrined it as our tradition, we'll be doing a super chat on YouTube. It could always be the last one, so don't miss it. Okay? And we have the store up. We have some nice winter merchandise that I think a lot of you might be interested in. Buddy, what do you think? Okay, yeah, because you're copyright issues with this guy. All righty, and we're continuing our tradition of doing Q&As. The mailbox is
filling up nicely, which is extremely good.
And on behalf of Buddy, Robbie wants me to say, what about? Okay, the tip jar.
The tip jar, yeah, good.
He's taking an interest in the tip jar.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. He's kind of been muscled aside by by Buddy, so now he's getting in on the act, which is very good.
So anything you can do to help us, George and I would deeply appreciate it. We don't have any patrons, we just have you. Okay,
that's it, exactly. So we're very grateful for all of your generosity and support, and then anything you can help with would be most appreciated. And remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.